Have you ever wondered why your backyard seems completely invisible to those vibrant, brilliant blue jays, while your neighbor down the street gets visited by them almost every single day? The answer might not be luck at all. It might come down to a piece of rustic, practical wisdom, an old trick tied to traditional, agricultural living, often credited to the Amish way of life, that promises to turn any yard into a true sanctuary for this species. But what is actually true behind this mystery? And what is simply internet sensationalism designed to get you to click? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to tell the difference. The blue jay is one of the most desired backyard visitors among birdwatchers and nature lovers, and it is easy to see why. Its plumage is strikingly vivid, its intelligence is well documented by scientists, and its social behavior is far more complex than most people realize. And yet, despite how much people want to attract them, many backyard owners make the same critical mistakes, using the wrong type of feeder or offering food that simply does not interest the bird. This is exactly where the legend of the so-called Amish trick comes in, a simplified, countryside approach that focuses on truly understanding the feeding habits of the bird in order to draw it close, naturally, without spending money on fancy gadgets or modern technology. Let's be upfront about something right away, because honesty matters here. The word Amish in that title is doing a lot of work, and it is doing it on purpose. It evokes an image of forgotten, almost mystical wisdom, something secret that has been passed down quietly for generations and kept away from the modern world. That is a very common and very effective marketing tactic, used across countless gardening and backyard videos online. But here is the truth. There is no secret ritual, no guarded family recipe, no mystical Amish ceremony involving blue jays. What actually works, and what has always worked, is something far more grounded. It is biology, plain and simple, the kind of biology that traditional farming communities understood through decades of direct, hands-on observation, long before any of it was confirmed in a university research paper. So let's get into what the real trick actually is, because this part matters more than the folklore surrounding it. The true key to attracting blue jays consistently comes down to offering whole peanuts, still in the shell, placed on a stable platform or tray feeder, not a hanging tube feeder, not anything that sways or wobbles in the wind. This single detail, the type of feeder you choose, makes an enormous difference, and almost nobody talks about it. To understand why, you need to understand the bird itself. Blue jays belong to the corvid family, the same family as crows and ravens, which means they share an almost obsessive fascination with nuts, acorns, and seeds, especially peanuts. Watch a blue jay at a feeder sometime and you will notice something fascinating. It does not just grab the first peanut it sees. It inspects several of them. It picks one up, shakes it slightly to judge the weight, sometimes puts it back down and chooses another instead. This is not random behavior. Scientists call this caching behavior, and it is one of the most remarkable things about corvid intelligence. Blue jays select the heaviest, most promising peanuts specifically because they plan to fly off and bury or hide them for later, often building food stores that can number in the hundreds across a single season, which they then rely on to survive the winter months when food becomes scarce. This single behavior tells you everything about why feeder type matters so much. Now think about a typical small, hanging tube feeder, the kind sold at almost every hardware store and garden center. Tube feeders are designed with small perches and narrow feeding ports, built primarily for smaller songbirds like chickadees and finches. Blue jays are considerably larger and heavier birds, and when they try to land on a feeder like that, the whole thing sways, tips, and becomes unstable under their weight. For a bird that needs to carefully inspect and select individual peanuts using a fairly deliberate, almost surgical process, a wobbling, unstable surface is simply not workable. It becomes frustrating, inefficient, and frankly, not worth the effort. So the jay leaves, and it does not come back. This, more than almost anything else, explains why so many yards with feeders still never seem to attract jays. The food might technically be there, but the setup itself is quietly telling the bird to go somewhere else. This is exactly the kind of detail that traditional rural and farming communities, including Amish households, understood instinctively, not through scientific study, but through decades of simply watching what worked on their own land. They were not running controlled experiments. They were observing real outcomes, year after year, and adjusting accordingly. And what they consistently noticed lines up perfectly with what modern ornithology has since confirmed. A solid, flat surface, whether it was an old wooden tray, a stump, or a sturdy railing, consistently outperformed anything that moved or wobbled when it came to attracting larger, more selective birds like jays. But the story does not stop at feeders. There are two more elements that traditional farming life provided almost automatically, simply as part of everyday rural living, and both of them play a major role in whether jays stick around long term. The first is the presence of hard mass trees, specifically oaks and hickories. These trees produce acorns and hickory nuts, both of which are favorite natural food sources for blue jays, arguably even more important to them than backyard feeders. In fact, blue jays have historically played a significant ecological role in spreading oak trees across North America, because they bury far more acorns than they ever retrieve, and the forgotten ones eventually sprout into new trees. Old farmsteads were often surrounded by these exact kinds of trees, planted generations earlier for shade, lumber, or simply because they were already part of the native landscape. A modern yard with no mature oaks or hickories nearby is missing one of the single biggest natural draws for this species. No feeder substitute can fully replace that. The second element is clean, moving water. Blue jays, like most birds, are drawn to water sources, but they show a clear preference for water that moves slightly, rather than completely still, stagnant water, partly because moving water tends to stay cleaner and signals lower risk of disease or predators lurking nearby. Traditional rural properties almost always had some version of this, whether it was a natural stream, a hand pump, or a simple trough that got refreshed daily as part of normal farm chores. None of this was designed specifically to attract birds. It was just a natural byproduct of how these communities lived, working closely with the land instead of separately from it. So when you put all of these pieces together, the peanuts in the shell, the stable platform feeder, the nearby oak or hickory trees, and the clean, moving water, you start to see that there was never one single secret. It was always a combination of small, consistent, biologically sound choices that traditional farming communities made naturally as part of their everyday lives, not because they were trying to crack some kind of code, but because that is simply how rural living worked for centuries. This is really the heart of the whole story, and it is honestly more satisfying than any made-up secret could ever be. The internet loves mystery. It loves the idea of a hidden trick that nobody else knows about. But what this really comes down to is something far more grounded and far more useful: real ornithology, applied in a practical, accessible way. Blue jays are not ignoring your yard by accident or out of some unexplainable preference. They are responding, very logically, to specific, identifiable conditions. And once you understand those conditions, you have the power to change them yourself. So if you genuinely want to break the spell of the empty yard, here is what actually matters. Skip the small, swaying tube feeder and invest instead in a simple, sturdy platform or tray feeder, something that sits flat and does not move under weight. Fill it with raw, unsalted peanuts, still in the shell, since that detail matters more than almost any other single factor. If your yard does not already have mature oak or hickory trees, consider planting one, understanding that this is a long-term investment that benefits not just blue jays, but an entire web of local wildlife. And if you have the ability to add a small, moving water feature, even something modest, it will make your yard noticeably more attractive, not just to jays, but to a wide range of birds throughout the year. In the end, this whole story is not really about magic, mystery, or some forgotten Amish secret being revealed for the first time. It is about respect, paying close attention to how nature actually works, and applying that knowledge in simple, practical ways. exactly the way rural and farming communities have done for generations, not because they were guarding a secret, but because they were paying attention. And now, you are too. If you found this breakdown useful and want more real, fact-checked explorations of backyard wildlife myths versus actual science, let me know in the comments which bird or backyard mystery you want covered next. And if this helped you understand your own yard a little better, give the video a like and consider subscribing, because there is a lot more of this kind of content coming.